Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Facebook Live from Alzheimer's Orange County. My name is Melissa Klaeb. I'm the Director of Education at Alzheimer's Orange County, and I'm joined again this morning by Ben Allen, one of our programs and education specialists. Good morning, Ben.
Good morning, Melissa. Great to be here.
Awesome. So this morning we are going to be talking about dispelling some common myths about dementia, some questions that we commonly get out in the community in the good old days when we would go do presentations in person, or that people may call into our helpline and ask, or that we encounter with friends and family, or that we once wondered about ourselves before we came to work for Alzheimer's Orange County and learned about these common myths. And so we'll go through them. There's about 7 of them. We may quiz you guys on some of them as we go about this. And we always, as always, invite you to type in any questions or comments or other myths you may have heard. And we'd love for this to be interactive. And so before we get started, I would love to thank this month's sponsor for our Facebook Lives, Caring Companions at Home. They're committed to providing seniors with quality in-home care. They've been a great sponsor of ours. They sponsor a lot of our webinars, and now for a few months, they'll be sponsoring our Facebook Lives. They have personalized and affordable in-home caregiving services. They have a 4-step process to ensure a perfect fit. A case manager will visit your home and assess the needs of your loved ones or loved one. They'll have a written plan of care. They'll do everything they can to get a great caregiver match from those they recommend. You can choose the one that you feel fits best. And they'll have periodic visits to assess and modify the care of your loved one. And so if you're interested in learning more, please visit caringcompanionsathome.com. I'll put the link in the comments. And again, we are so thankful. We could not do what we do without them. They've been a great community partner of ours. So thank you, Caring Companions. All right, so we've got some pictures up this time. Ben, you want to share about your picture and then I'll share about mine?
Sure. I got involved in this work almost exactly 11 years ago when my wife Judy was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And it's been quite a journey, and I have learned just so much about the disease, about the realities of dementia, and how to adapt to the changes that we've seen in Judy's expressions, and how can I best be prepared to interact and connect with her. This particular picture was taken about 4 years ago. At that point, Judy was walking some. She no longer can walk. That's part of the effect of the disease as it spread to different regions of the brain. So she doesn't walk, she no longer talks. But back when this picture was taken, there was live music in the community where she's been living for the last several years. And music is just the way that she engages, and she and I can have a connection, because conversation simply doesn't work. She can answer a few yes or no questions, but really can't carry on a conversation. So music, and back in those days, I would get her up on her feet and wrap my arms around her, and we'd start to move a little bit to the music, and it was really a sweet time. We don't have that anymore, but we accept and find ways to celebrate what we do have, and we do have a connection with music. So tell us about your story, Melissa.
Thanks for sharing that, Ben. So my picture was also taken a few years ago. This was in 2015, and this was about, I guess, midway probably into my mom's kind of journey with Alzheimer's. She started developing symptoms around 2011, was diagnosed in 2013. So this was a couple years after her diagnosis, and she was just like Judy, walking around, very active and talkative. And these days she's in the later stages, which is difficult, obviously, for our family and in different ways. But I love this picture. She's smiling, we're engaged, and we know that, and we'll talk about this a little bit as we go on, that good times are possible. We know it's a lot of gloom and doom, and we will talk about, kind of the dark sides and you know, the consequences in the brain changes. But we'll also talk about the things that I love spending more time on, which is how to really foster those beautiful connections that are still possible, and how to make the most, and how to make every day as positive as possible. And so, yeah, hopefully this helps you guys know a little bit more about where we're coming from, both caregivers, Ben and I, with very personal experiences. And we'd love to learn from your experiences as well. So here we go. I think myth number 1 is next. All right. So feel free to chime in anytime, anyone who's watching, and we may pause on some of the ones that are kind of more prominent that we feel in our society, and really take a minute to get a poll of the audience. But feel free to chime in anytime. So we have our first myth here: Alzheimer's is worse than dementia. So I feel like, Ben, we get some form of this question wherever we go. Are they the same? Is one worse than the other? Are they different? Does one come first? So what say you about this first myth?
Yeah, the question really can't be answered in that way, other than to say none of the above.
Yeah.
Alzheimer's is one form of dementia. And I think we've got a slide that we can illustrate this, Melissa. Let's bring that up.
And it's probably a little small for people. I can't really make it bigger without putting one of us away. But I can put myself away for a second. Here, you go ahead.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that's better. Thanks. So dementia is a term that is used to describe a collection of symptoms. When a person has memory loss plus a cognitive impairment in some other domain, like reasoning or sensory perception, language, and so on, that's labeled as dementia. And it simply refers to those symptoms. Sometimes it's called a syndrome. But it's only about symptoms. And so the question becomes then, what's causing those symptoms? And there's a long list of different causes of dementia, or another way of saying that is different kinds of dementia. And so we use the umbrella as an illustration to say the umbrella is dementia. Underneath that are causes, most of which are irreversible. And so the list on the right, those are diseases like Alzheimer's disease, dementia with Lewy bodies, and so on. Those are the causes, or you might say the different types. Another way I often describe it is to say that the word dementia is like the word cancer. It's analogous. Cancer is a general term that covers a lot of different diseases, different parts of the body affected, and so on. And so if I were to say to you, I have cancer, you would immediately be wondering, well, what kind? And so the same is true with dementia. Alzheimer's is simply the number 1 cause of dementia. So by definition, if someone is diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, they have dementia, although that dementia may be mild in the early stages. As it progresses, becomes more and more severe. But Alzheimer's is simply one form of dementia. Go ahead.
Back. No, that was perfectly stated. Only things I would add, I'm not sure if you mentioned this, Alzheimer's, far and away the most common form of dementia. I think we see here anywhere from 60 to 80% of cases of dementia are caused by Alzheimer's disease. And really that Alzheimer's, Lewy body, frontotemporal, and vascular, they make up over 90% of most types of dementia. We have those potentially reversible causes there on the right. And those really make up a small percentage, but that doesn't mean it's not important to go get assessed if somebody is worried about their memory or worried about the memory of their loved one, because even if somebody had Alzheimer's and a thyroid condition, treating that treatable cause can still improve some of their memory, even if they also have an irreversible dementia. So we know that it's really, really important. And using those reversible causes as kind of a carrot to get someone to go to the doctor can also be helpful, and say, hey, we need to get this checked out because it could be something that we could do something about. And that's really important to address as well. We'll talk a little bit about that at the end too. Anything else to add on this one?
No, that's good.
All right, let's go on to the next. We got a lot of myths. Okay. This is a big one. Alzheimer's is hereditary. So I want to take a minute here. Anyone that's watching, yes, no, you think it's hereditary, you think it's none of the above. We'll give you guys a few seconds here before we chime in.
Yeah, clearly this is a big concern, especially
this is a big one.
When a parent has been diagnosed with Alzheimer's or some other form of dementia. Many people are concerned, adult children want to know how much risk do I have of developing the same disease. And so it's important that we address this.
All right, we have one yes. So let's take it from there. Ben, why don't you start us off?
Yeah. So it's partially true, but it's a small number of cases that are clearly due to the genetics that you inherited from your parents. I've heard numbers roughly 20% have some genetic factor, and there are a number of different genes that can be involved, but most of them are not determinant. They don't. If you have a specific gene, doesn't necessarily mean that you will get Alzheimer's disease. For example, the most commonly known, people hear about the most, is the APOE4 gene. And many people have that, but it only increases the risk of developing Alzheimer's in later years by a relatively small percentage. The cases that are absolutely clearly genetic, and if you have this gene, you're going to get it, are really, really few, and 1% or less, where you can inherit this gene from both parents, and that's determinant. Until there's a cure found, then it's definite that someone would develop the disease. But take the APOE4 gene, there are many other factors that are involved. Many people who have that gene don't develop Alzheimer's disease. And so there are lots of things that we can do to reduce our risk and change lifestyle to lower that risk.
Absolutely. And I'll just piggyback off of what you said. So I think the underlying feeling and question when people ask about this is, is this a threat? Like you mentioned, should I get tested, right? With all these 23andMe and all these kind of do-it-yourself kits now. And I know that most, if not all, genetic counselors would recommend against, specifically testing for those genes because there's so much we don't know about them yet. And the APOE4 that you talked about, again, that's not deterministic, right? Just because you have that gene or that allele does not mean you will get Alzheimer's disease. And people without that gene can also develop Alzheimer's disease. On the APOE4 front, so you get one copy from your mom and one copy from your dad, right? And if you have from both parents a copy of that APOE4, that would increase your risk quite a bit, but that's a very, very small percentage of people. I think I read 2 to 3% of people have a copy from both their mom and their dad. It's more common, about 1 in 4 of us will have one copy of the APOE4, and that may increase our risk a little bit, as you talked about. Interestingly, APOE2 allele may reduce your risk for Alzheimer's disease, but that is unfortunately very, very rare. It's more common that people would have an APOE3 allele, which doesn't seem to impact it either way. So that's kind of the most common form. So that's a little genetics 101 on the Alzheimer's front. And as you mentioned, the true hereditary deterministic forms, very, very small percentage from what we know, less than 1%. And these families are kind of known to researchers. They've studied them. They get it really early in their life, like sometimes in their 30s and 40s, and they tend to all get it at the same age. And it's, again, very, very rare. For instance, my mom had a form, she had early onset Alzheimer's disease, right? She was in her 50s when she was diagnosed. And so oftentimes that may be, kind of more hereditary. but her father had Alzheimer's disease, but he had it at a later age. So likely, hers is not that kind of true hereditary form. Unfortunately, because Alzheimer's disease is so common, many of us will get it and have another relative with it. And that doesn't mean that we got it from that person, right? It can still be sporadic. I've also read that having, a close relative with the disease may increase your risk a little bit. But I love that you mentioned those lifestyle factors, because we know that those can be even more important than the genes that we're born with. Things like exercise been proven to slow and reduce the risk of cognitive decline at any age. Never too late to start, as Roxy, our memory guru, would say at Alzheimer's Orange County. So yeah, we could talk about this forever, but let's move on to the next one. Love this one. It was a little blast from the past. Alzheimer's is caused by aluminum, mercury, or silver fillings. Do you still get this question, Ben? I don't get this question very often. Every once in a while.
Occasionally, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and the reality is, well, first of all, other than the small percentage of cases that are clearly genetic, we really don't know what's causing the vast majority of cases. However, these particular myths have been studied very, very extensively, and there is no evidence that aluminum or silver fillings are a cause of Alzheimer's disease. So it simply is not true. Now, we wish we knew what was causing it, but that's the focus of a lot of research that continues to go on, and many of our research partners are deeply involved in that and trying to find that disease mechanism so it can be addressed.
Yeah, so bottom line on this one, there is no evidence that supports these theories that were kind of popular in the 60s and 70s and when research was being done. No evidence that suggests a link between everyday aluminum exposure and an increased risk. But I will say that even though I knew that, I kind of did some internet research, prior to this, just to see what was out there. And let me just reiterate, you can find anything you want on the internet these days. Dr. Trin, one of our partners, says this a lot. You can find papers that support really any position that you're looking for, or articles. And so I think this particular myth brings up a really important point, that it's really important to get your information from trusted sources. The NIH, the NIA, the Alzheimer's Association, us, UCI Mind, our local incredible partner in research here in Orange County. These are the sources that I go to regularly to see, their positions and their statements on things like this when we're confused. And they'll often have links to meta-analyses and systematic reviews, and because one paper here or there might say something, but it's really the collection of works which makes science what it is. And we can point to a large body of work and say that this is, the best evidence we have at this time. And so definitely for this one, aluminum, mercury, silver fillings, no conclusive, no good evidence to say that these are related and cause Alzheimer's disease. Yeah,
and I would just emphasize that when you read about something in the popular press, be skeptical. Often a news article about some study is focusing on one small part of the study, taking it out of context or exaggerating the significance of the finding. And as you said, Melissa, one study is not sufficient documentation, proof that this or that is true, whether it's in terms of cause or cure. Lots and lots of wishful thinking when it comes to cures.
Yeah.
So just be skeptical. If you read about something in the news and you see that it came out of a particular university or research institution, you can go to that institution and read their report on their finding and get a much clearer perspective on what they're really saying.
Absolutely. It can be really hard to dig through the articles and everything with news coming at us 24/7 these days, and and press just wanting to, make a good headline from a paper, like you said, pick out one part. We cured how many times have we cured Alzheimer's disease, only to click in the article and find out, okay, it was in 10 mice and this, and I think researchers are making good progress. I'm hopeful for that every day, but I think one of our myths will address this, so I won't get too ahead of myself in terms of treatment and medication. So, all right, let's move on. Here we go. People who have Alzheimer's will become aggressive and combative. Will they inevitably become aggressive and combative?
Yeah, not necessarily. So I guess none of the above. Some people do become aggressive. Some people become combative, and I have to say that there have been times when Judy has been aggressive, and we had to work through a number of approaches to find a solution, but not everybody will. Almost always, the agitation, anger, aggressiveness is an expression of some either physical or emotional need. And it's our job as caregivers to try to discern what that is, especially when our loved ones can't articulate it clearly. Now, for example, when Judy doesn't speak much at all, she simply can't tell us how she's feeling, but we can observe and we can infer from what we see in her facial expressions and in her body language, her posture, how she's feeling. And sometimes it's very clear that she's cold, or she doesn't feel well, she's tired, any number of things that could explain what we're seeing. But when it comes to the anger, the aggression, the combativeness, that's often based in frustration. We see anger. I mean, it's like the illustration we've used about an iceberg, where what we see above the waterline is really small. And that's the anger that we see. Underneath the water, there's this huge mass of the iceberg that represents all the different emotions that any of us might be feeling, that together combined lead to an outburst of anger or even being physically combative. So finding ways to help people be calm. We like to say we want to help our loved ones be in the zone. That zone is contentedly engaged. We don't want them to be bored. We don't want them to be overstimulated. And obviously we don't want them to be in pain. If we can discern that they have some physical need, it might be a need to go to the restroom. And if they can't articulate that, or there might be a urinary tract infection that, because of the way the disease is impairing the brain and the perception of pain is changing, they may not be able to identify that there is pain, but they still feel it. Their body is going to react to that pain. So if we can closely observe and infer and check out what our hypotheses, what might be the cause. That's basically what science is all about. Observe, draw, create, come up with a hypothesis, and then test that. So we can help people find that zone. And so the skills that we need to learn to connect and communicate with our loved one are going to help us help our loved one be at ease. And when they are calmer, when we are calmer, then we can communicate more effectively and everybody relaxes. And a big part of that, we always talk about breathing. Just take a breath before we react. Just slow down. Okay, now let's see. Take your time. And there are lots of different activities, and we've got a great workshop that we do from time to time on activities that we can plan for our loved ones at home. And if we can find the activities that they enjoy that help them to be calm, to be contentedly engaged, then we can reduce that frustration that leads to agitation and anger.
Absolutely. I would echo everything you said. I think this one, more than the other myths, is there's so much to unpack here for me. I want to share this quote that I know that I've shared before, and I'll read it because it's probably small for people. But what is commonly seen as confused or challenging behavior is, in actuality, compensatory or adaptive behavior by an individual who continues to express agency and purpose in their own unique way. And we talk about this a lot. We talk about why someone may be distressed. And, you know, typically in the dementia care world, there's been this, we call it the biomedical model, where we talk about something called BPSD, behavioral and psychological symptoms of dementia. And that framework is changing a little bit because we've really medicalized behavior symptoms and psychological symptoms, when in actuality it's really difficult for us to know the exact cause of why someone, we call it acting out, or they're being aggressive or combative, when really we know that all behavior, all expressions are a form of communication. And oftentimes as dementia progresses and the words become fewer and the ability to articulate what we need, or even to know what we need, lessens, maybe all that person has is kind of striking out or yelling or crying or doing something we would say is not what they would usually do, or not what a typical normal person would do in this situation. But we really have to look deeper and see, okay, is there an unmet need that we can address? Is there some low-hanging fruit? Like, do they need to go to the bathroom? Are they hungry? Are they in pain? Or is it more than that? Is it deeper? We all have these needs our whole life that don't go away when we have dementia. We have the need to feel safe in our environment. We have the need to feel loved. We have the need to feel like we have choices in our day, and that we have some autonomy and independence, and all of these things that become much more challenging to help someone with dementia achieve. But that doesn't mean it's not important, and that doesn't mean that, you know, that we shouldn't take that challenge on, because I think when we tend to see these what we would call behaviors is when one of these key needs is not being met. And so it's really upon us to adapt our approach, as you talked about, in the care environment, and make sure that we are doing everything we can. There's one more analogy I'll share before we move on, and that's this person, Dr. Al Power, who I love and I quote probably every week. He was asked, well, what if someone is just combative out of nowhere? What does that mean? What do you think about that? And he said, well, I like to think about a tea kettle that's been sitting on the fire all day. And these little things you can kind of equate the fire to little things that have been happening, you know, all day long. Maybe they're lack of choices for them. Maybe an interaction that was negative, or someone kind of forcing them to take a bath, or something that they didn't like. You know, you can imagine endless scenarios like that. And then all this, and then at some point the tea kettle goes off, right? It whistles. And we only see that. We didn't see everything leading up to it. And so it's really, again, I would say probably rare for that outburst to just happen out of the blue. It's probably a combination of things that have been happening that we really have to take a step back and be good detectives. And it's difficult. It's not an easy thing to do. But we know that we can get better with practice and with learning and talking to other caregivers. So this is a big, big question, a big myth that we could talk about forever. But unless you have anything else to add on that, I think we'll move on to the next one.
Yeah, just briefly, listening is so important and so hard. Most of us are not naturally good listeners. We need to stop talking, stop assuming that we know, we understand, and really listen. And part of listening is observing. And so if we take the time to really listen, and then provide some affirmation, let our loved one know that we've heard them, that provides comfort. And then we can move on. We can change the subject. We can change this physical setting, go do something else, and move off of that agitation and anger cycle.
Absolutely. Perfect. All right, let's see here. Next one, Alzheimer's is a disease of memory loss. People don't die from Alzheimer's disease. What do we think? True, false, none of the above?
So we get responses from from our listeners?
Let's get responses on the next one. Let's go ahead with this.
Okay. So yeah, I hear this so often, and there's a fundamental misunderstanding of the disease. The disease is progressive, degenerative. It continues to destroy brain tissue, and as it does, it affects more and more cognitive functions. Melissa, if we can go to the illustration of the brain here. Yeah, that's going to be too hard to see. So
I'll put myself away for a little bit.
All right. Okay, that's a little better. So I'll talk with my fingers. Alzheimer's disease and many other forms of dementia typically affect short-term memory, which is seated in the hippocampus region structure of the brain that's on both sides, deep inside the brain, that is the seat of learning. And so new memory, short-term memory. And so we think, because that's the most common early symptom of Alzheimer's, many people think that Alzheimer's is just a disease of memory. But the issue is that it doesn't stay in that region, it spreads. It continues to destroy the neurons, the brain tissue in the hippocampus as it spreads throughout the brain. So it begins to impact the language center in the temporal, particularly in the left temporal lobe, where people then have more and more difficulty with word finding, expressing their thoughts, understanding what we're saying to them. And it continues to spread to the frontal lobes of the brain, which is responsible for our higher level of thoughts, decision-making, abstract thinking, understanding the passage of time. All of those are part of, are seated in the frontal lobes of our brain. It also then begins to impact deep inside the brain where our emotions are regulated. So you can see more and more cognitive functions beyond memory are being affected. So emotional regulation and then sensory perception, and this is really not well understood by so many people. And I saw so clearly evidenced in Judy's actions. She was having trouble with her vision that wasn't related to her eyesight, but it was her brain's inability to process what her eyes were taking in. And that's because the disease is destroying the neurons in the visual cortex that is part of how we process the world around us and how we understand it. And so her vision is declining in depth perception, in peripheral vision, in color contrast, and that would impact her in her ability to interact with the physical world. But that's not all. It's spreading throughout the brain and eventually comes to the brain stem, which regulates all of our major organs, our reflexes like swallowing. Swallowing becomes more and more difficult in the later stages of the disease. And on that subject, we have a webinar coming up. Is that next week, Melissa?
Yes, I was going to plug the webinar. Thank you. Tuesday, the 14th at 11:30. We have a wonderful speech language pathologist, and he's going to be talking about the impact of Alzheimer's disease on swallowing. And I'm personally very excited to sit in on this webinar because my mom is in this stage now. She's in kind of very, very late stage of dementia where swallowing is becoming, and has been for a while, very difficult. And so of course we worry about things like aspiration pneumonia, where something goes down the wrong pipe and then the person develops pneumonia. That's actually the most common way that people die from Alzheimer's disease is pneumonia. Alzheimer's disease is the 6th leading cause of death in the United States, and some say the 3rd in Orange County where we live, probably because we skew as an older population. Orange County is a great place to grow old and settle down. But yes, we know that Alzheimer's disease, unfortunately, unless death comes another way before the end, will eventually lead to death. So thanks for sharing all that progression, Ben, with us. All right, we've got a couple more here. Alzheimer's can be reversed or slowed by medications or supplements. Let's take a minute, weigh in, whoever's out there. You think yes, no? maybe so. Another common question. These are all kind of pretty common questions that we encounter every day. Anybody out there? Ben, you want to take this one?
Sure. Yeah, there is so much misunderstanding over this. So let me just address FDA-approved medications. There are no medications that impact the disease process. The disease is moving forward inexorably. It continues to progress no matter what we take. There are 4 medications on the market that are FDA approved, but they only treat symptoms. I'm not going to get into the specifics of medications, but they are only providing some small benefit in symptoms, allowing the brain to function a little better for a while, probably not more than 3 years, and they lose their effectiveness. And they absolutely do not reverse the disease, nor do they even slow its progression. So whether or not someone chooses to take one or more of those medications, it's not going to alter the disease process and the ultimate timeline in the progression. So we just don't have anything that's even close to a cure. A ton of research, a lot of money has gone into trials, various prospective medications to see if the disease can be even slowed. And so far, none of those trials have been effective. And the same is true for supplements. There's a lot of talk, and especially in the popular press, we'll see headlines like, could this, fill in the blank, be the cure for Alzheimer's, ? It's a great headline to get people's attention and to sell advertising, but there is no definitive support for any of those supplements. So it's not a great situation. We wish it was better, but there just aren't any medications or supplements that will make a difference. And Melissa, you've got a good perspective on supplements. You want to talk about that?
Sure. I'll share this infographic that was showed to me by a pharmacist that we often have speak for us, and he's wonderful. I trust him completely, and he echoes what all the great research organizations and public health groups say, and that this is a graphic. It's kind of small, you can't really see it too well, but if you Google this phrase along with AARP or the Global Council for Brain Health, I think this is a beautifully done infographic that basically kind of distills down the evidence that we have that there's no good evidence that says that any particular supplement will prevent or slow the progression of an Alzheimer's disease. Hopefully we're getting all the nutrients we need from our food. If that's an issue for you, obviously that's something you want to talk to your physician about, and maybe getting a supplement that you can't otherwise get from your diet. But we know that the best way to ingest and process everything that we need is through our diet. And diet is very important and has been shown to play a role in cognitive health. We know that a Mediterranean type of diet, heavy on the fresh fruits and veggies, is really important to get all those nutrients that you do need. And on the medication front, I'd echo exactly what you said, Ben, that we do have those FDA-approved medications that we've had for a while, but really, I hear from both sides. Yes, we saw this medication improve our symptoms for a short time, or some people saying, the side effects kind of outweighed the benefits for them. And a lot of it can be really tough to tell with the progression of dementia if a medication is helping. But we do know that, if person A and person B, if person A took, Aricept or a medication, you may see a little improvement in their symptoms, as you talked about, maybe a little sharper for a short time. But then person A and person B, there would be no change in the progression of the disease for them. It wouldn't slow down the disease progression. I think that's a really important point to make, that, you know, we can have some symptom improvement, which may improve the quality of life for a short time. And so these are highly personal decisions that people should talk to their neurologists and their physicians about. We also know that there's clinical trials out there that can be a way for people to try. We know that the cure or a treatment will come eventually from a clinical trial. And so a lot of people feel that, you know, this is something they can do and contribute to research. My mom was in one, but again, this is a highly personal decision, and all the pros and cons should be weighed for each family independently. Yeah. So, anything else to add on this one?
One thing I would add, it's pretty clear that has great benefits, whether...
You're breaking up a little bit for me, Ben, and I don't know if it's for everyone on Facebook as well. So
risk.
Okay, there we go.
It's good for just improving my outlook, my mental ability to respond, my memory. Getting more oxygen to the brain is really important, and exercise is just one of the best things we can do. And it also helps by simply calming. As we said earlier, if we can do something to help our loved ones be calm, that improves life for everybody, and exercise clearly has those benefits.
And I think you were frozen for a little bit there, but I gathered that you were talking about exercise as a very important thing that we can do for many reasons. And I say this a lot, but if doctors could prescribe a pill that gives everyone the benefits of exercise, everyone would be on this exercise pill, right? Because it just benefits every organ system, and we know that it benefits our brain immensely. Some interesting studies have even shown that volume areas, certain areas of the brain increase after like a year of sustained exercise, areas like the hippocampus, which we know is really important for memory. So I think exercise is so key, and something we should be doing anyways. The World Health Organization recommends 150 minutes a week. So make sure everyone's getting their exercise in. Okay, I think we're down to our last one here. If I have memory loss, that means that I definitely have Alzheimer's.
So that's clearly not true. Number one, memory loss, some memory loss is a part of normal aging. Our brains slow down just like our bodies slow down. I can't run as fast or jump as high as I used to. I can't process problems. I can't remember as much. I can't multitask as well as I used to. That's normal. So memory loss alone is not...
Oh no, you froze again. I don't know if it's your internet connection. Hopefully you come back here. Okay.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay.
So it's simply not true that memory loss means that you have Alzheimer's. There can be many reasons that we're struggling with our memory. Could be some of those reversible causes that we showed in the umbrella slide, such as depression or infections, or thyroid problems, for example, can impact the brain's ability to function. And so it's important to check it out, to find out if there's something abnormal going on with our brain. And one of the ways to do that is get a memory screen. And we've got a great program on memory screening.
Yes, we do. Let me put that up here. So typically we did these in person. We call them our mind checks. And now we're offering them virtually over Zoom. So we would encourage anyone who's interested to call our helpline to schedule an appointment. And these are, confidential, and we've heard great feedback from people that were very nervous to do this. It can be a really nerve-wracking thing, but that they had as good of an experience as can be had with this with our wonderful caring staff. And so we would encourage anyone to do that, or talk to your health provider. But anyway, either way, if you're concerned about memory, we would really encourage you to get that checked out and get that assessed. Because as we talked about, it may be something as well that can be treatable. Ben, you're like cutting in and out. I don't know what you can hear from me. All right, I'm going to wrap this up. And again, these are our resources for you, our helpline. Please give us a call. You're with us already on Facebook here, but stay tuned for more Facebook Lives. Please check out our webinar next week. I'm going to put the link in the comments in a second. I think it's going to be a great webinar on swallowing and Alzheimer's disease if you're interested in that. And we have recordings of all our past education on our website and on YouTube. Check that out as well. And again, really want to thank our sponsor for today, Caring Companions at Home, for being such a wonderful community sponsor. caringcompanionsathome.com if that's a service that you're in need of. Any last words, Ben? I don't know if you can hear me. You might be frozen. All right, here's a link for the webinar. Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.